Okay, hi, Mr. Zelaya. Thank you so much for being a part of this interview with me. To get started, can you please um, give us all your name and title?
Hello, my name is Cesar Zelaya. I am an 8th grade U.S. history teacher and avid coordinator at Lawrence Middle School in Chatsworth, California.
Thank you. So we're going to be talking about challenging behaviors for kiddos in school. So my first question, as a parent of an LAUSD student who currently holds an IEP and falls under the disability of having autism spectrum disorder, can you please explain some of the challenging behaviors your child exhibits in the classroom based on either parent observation or what you've heard in your IEP meetings?
My son struggles with answering questions. He struggles with transitioning between preferred and non-preferred activities. He struggles a little bit on the social aspect of collaboratively playing with peers and classmates. And I think that's about it.
Okay. And based on the feedback that you've received from your child's teacher or from the IEP team members, how are those challenges being supported both in and out of the classroom?
Well, for the transitioning part, from preferred to non-preferred, I know that the teacher is priming him. She's giving him warnings before transitions happening. They also have a visual chart and a visual schedule for him, so he knows what times he has to do certain things and what's coming up next, so he can prepare for that. They give him warnings when he's outside, 2 minutes till we have to go back inside. I know they're trying to encourage him to play collaboratively with other students, sometimes making it smaller groups so that he could feel a little bit more comfortable. And he's getting services, speech, and there's another one, OT, I believe it is. I think he's getting OT to help him with some of the issues he's dealing with.
Okay, and then according to the LAUSD website, it states that staffing currently utilizes the 3-tier system when handling challenging behaviors. Tier 1 just being the general way to work with all students, Tier 2 being for at-risk students, and Tier 3 being for high-risk students. In your experience now as an educator rather than a parent, how have you dealt with students who engage in challenging behaviors in your specific classroom?
One of the first things I try to do is determine the function of the behavior itself. So, is this kid screaming because he needs a need met, or is it just attention? What's the function of his behavior or her behavior? And I try to address that more so than addressing the behavior. But based on the LAUSD, we would have to go. The tier system really just focuses around the severity of the behavior. So if it's just like a classroom interruption, that's the Tier 1. If the student is hurting himself or another person, that would be Tier 3. So you would address those depending on the tier that it falls under. Sometimes you would have to remove the student from the classroom, but the vast majority of times it's usually just address the child and the behavior based on what you think the function is.
Okay, and then how does administration work with students who engage in challenging behavior, specifically at your school site?
Again, it depends on the severity of the behavior and the child himself or herself. But most of them, they try to do the least restrictive based on what they have, right? So let's say a child with autism is hurting themselves, then they would have to intervene probably a little bit more severely than a student who is just interrupting in the class.
Okay. And then how do you, as an educator, communicate these challenging behaviors with parents? And as a two-parter, how do you feel that parents, do they take on an equal partnership with the school to support the child both in the prevention and intervention of these challenging behaviors?
What was the first part of the question?
The first part is, how do you communicate challenging behaviors with parents?
Well, communicating with parents could be done through phone calls, emails, again, depending on the severity of the situation, the urgency, I would say. If it's maybe the student is disrupting a lot, that probably an email. But if something more severe is happening, then we'd call in the moment. Probably set up a conference of some sort. And to the second part of the question, what was
Is how do you feel like if parents take on equal partnerships with the school to support the child in the prevention and intervention of challenging behaviors?
absolutely. I was just speaking about function, and sometimes we can't figure out function in the moment in the setting at school. So the input of parents can give us, um, just the knowledge of the child that the parent has can be very useful and help us on how we address certain situations. So I think the parent is an equal partner, pretty much even more important sometimes than the teacher and the aides that are there working with the child.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.